Hello everyone and welcome back to another One versus One Me premiere. How are you all doing? What's going on? I've had a very strange week. If any of you guys know from watching our podcast on Sunday that my cat is not very well, which makes me super sad. We had to take him to the vet, so I do apologise for dipping so soon into Sunday's stream. Really sorry about that, but obviously got to look after my kitty cat. Just a heads up, at the end of this video I'm gonna kind of play some music because I felt like last week everybody rushed to get their questions in as soon as I said thank you for watching, and that I was wrapping it up. Everybody was like fighting to get their questions out, and like P Mars was like tippity typing super quick, and then the conversation just had to die. We had no choice, so I'm going to just play some music at the end of the show just so that if there's anything people want to actually say, they don't get kicked out of chat. It's entirely up to you if you want to stay. I'll obviously be there until everybody's gone. I'm going to start with China like I did last week. So as we discovered last week, China has 1.4 billion people living in China. The cases for China haven't gone up all too much. So you've got the active population going down to 0.0001. Whereas last week, as you can see, it was 0.0002. There's only been a few new cases, and I believe, we can see there's been around 300 new cases in the week. All of the other countries who have a considerably large population of infected people have had a much larger case increase in the last week, whereas China's only had 300. So we can see that it is still on the decline. Deaths haven't risen too much either. Deaths have only risen by like 30 deaths in the last week, which is really, again, it's very low for China, and considering this is where it all started, so China's death percentage has actually gone down. Pretty much every other country's death percentage has gone up. We can move on now to France and Italy. So we'll start with France. It has 0.07% of the population ever been infected, and only 0.05 are infected right now, according to these statistics. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit why I don't think we can trust these statistics. So having spoken to D, he was saying that COVID-19, there's not a test for COVID-19. There is a test for COVID, but there is not, which is, again, a type of common cold, but there is not a test for COVID-19. What that means is that these people on these numbers and people on this screen might have COVID-19, the coronavirus. They might have just a common cold. But then you have to question, well, would the mortality rate be higher if they were just testing people with COVID-19? Would the mortality rate be much higher? I'm always talking about why the mortality rate is lower. Would the mortality rate still be the same? Are people dying from normal COVID? France, 0.07. Last week it was 0.03. The mortality rate is going up, but I honestly don't think any of the mortalities will go higher than 15%, which is still quite low, considering 15% of 1% or less than 1% isn't high. And I will be surprised if we see a number higher than 5% of the population ever having this, and I will be surprised if we ever see it where 4% of the population currently have it. I will be very, very, very surprised. So yeah, the mortality rate has gone up by 1.5%, like 1.75%. The current active cases has also gone up. Obviously, I think we have to take into account incubation of the virus. Everybody who was infected 2 weeks ago isn't going to come to light until now. I think give it a couple of weeks, we'll see a decline in people catching the virus, but I think we will see an increase in the mortality rate as it kind of starts to level out. So Italy, slightly higher, but still not an entire percent. 0.17% of the population. So it's almost doubled. Like, it was at 6. No, it's not almost double. It's gone up by like 36,000. It was at 69,000 and now it's at 105,000. And their mortality rate is considerably higher than the average. It's at 11.74%. Last week we were at 9.8%. So that has gone up quite a bit. Again, I don't know what we can attest this to. I honestly think, I feel like if we had an actual like contingency plan across the globe where there's enough beds, there's enough access to healthcare, I feel like we wouldn't have the mortality rate that we have. But it's like in England when it snows, the country just shuts down. We're just like, okay, it's snowing, let's stay in bed. It might only be like an inch of snow, but people aren't getting out of bed. People aren't moving. Nothing's happening. And the reason for that is because it snows for like 3 days a year if we're lucky. That's all the snow we get. And it's really slippery, horrible, slippery snow. And the reason we don't do anything about it is because what's the point in spending hundreds of thousands of pounds, millions of pounds on vehicles and things that would clear the snow for the sake of 3 days? And I kind of feel like that's what's happening right now. I mean, we saw Ebola, we saw Zika. They still weren't massive numbers. I mean, I didn't know anybody with Ebola, but I feel like Ebola hit the Middle East more than it did over here. I feel like because we don't have pandemics all the time, if we were living in a constant state of a pandemic, like all the time, I think we'd probably have those plans set in place of, okay, this is what's going to happen, we'd have more facilities. But because it doesn't happen all too often, it's almost as though the government's just like, a few people are dying, it's okay, never mind, sweep it under the rug kind of thing. Let's have a look at England. So England is, in terms of the people infected, is much lower than Italy and France. We've got 0.03% of the population ever contracting coronavirus. And that's the same right now. There hasn't been many people that have recovered yet. And we have a 7.11% mortality, which has gone up from 5.22. I feel like England is in mass hysteria right now. It is crazy. You've got the people who are like, I won't catch it, fuck it, let's go outside, who are still going out, driving around. And then you get the other people who are like, oh my God, you've just killed my nan. You've just killed everyone. How could you possibly go outside? We don't have like a middle ground of people just being sane and normal. There are genuine psychopaths. And it's worrying because, I mean, us lot, the majority of the people who are going to be watching this video are people who think outside the box and who look for a reason for things and don't just trust everything at face value. You guys do what I do and go and find the answers. There's a lot of people that are around my mum's age who trust the TV, you know, the government. And I mean, my mum's scared. My mum is panicking, and I don't know how to not panic her. I don't know how to be like, it's okay, Mom, like, it's fine. This is why it's happening. This, and this is what's going on. And it's difficult because she obviously still looks at me as like this little girl who doesn't know anything, as opposed to a 27-year-old woman who is capable of thinking for herself. You know, you get that with most parents. They look at their kids and they're like, nah, they're younger than me, they don't know what they're talking about, compared to the government. So it's difficult trying to be like, no, Mum. My mum's a very trusting person, so when it comes to the government, she trusts them, and I'm like, stop, Mum. And I feel like that is the same for a lot of the people my mum's age. I mean, I said to her the other day, I was like, yeah, but that, she was like, well, all of the people I know are scared and think this. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because all of the people you know sit on their butts watching TV and don't have the capacity to think for themselves. They just think what they're told to think. So it's worrying how many people are just like, meh, you know, meh, just all these sheep. It's worrying. So America has gone up so much. So it was at 0.01% of the population and is now at 0.05 Wow. 188,000 people compared to last week's 54,000. Well, 55,000 pretty much. But their ow, I just hit my hand. But their mortality rate hasn't gone up too much in terms of percent-wise. So last week they were at 1.42%. This week they're at 2.15%, which is not that much in comparison to other countries that have like skyrocketed up. Oh, and I will say, really quickly, while Vietnam is on the screen, last week, now this could have been me fucking up. This entirely and completely could have been me not triple checking my work. But last week, Vietnam was at 4. This week, Vietnam's on 0 deaths. I don't know why. I mean, I could have fucked up. I didn't screenshot the website to check this. So I can't go back and look to see if it was me who fucked up. This week I have screenshotted it to be like, okay, well, that's what we had as of this time. So where are we up to? Sweden. So Sweden has gone up by 0.02% in terms of cases, and the mortality rate has gone up by 3.3%. We're at 4% for Sweden, whereas last week we're at 1.7%. I feel like they're just kind of catching up, and I think this is just, no, not catching up. I feel like all these numbers will start to level out, and the data that we're receiving, I think it won't be increasing much. I think we're either coming to the kind of pinnacle, like the tippy top, the highest numbers we're going to see, and I think they're going to slowly go down, and that's, we'll start to, I think the mortality rates are going to go up higher. I'll be shocked if I see mortality rates higher than 20%. I think next week we'll have a global average of 5.5, maybe 6. But I think we're going to see a lot of deaths this next week. So we'll talk about global. This has gone up by 0.005%. So we're at 0.01. As of 12 a.m. GMT, this number was 862,782. It has changed, and it's gone to 877,000. But I'm gonna, instead of me, if I had to keep constantly changing it, I would never get this video out. So we're gonna stick with the 12 a.m. numbers just for the sake of my sanity. So 4.92% mortality rate. That's gone up. 2 weeks ago it was 4% mortality rate. Now it's last week it was 4.5, and now it is 4.92. What's interesting here is 170,000 people have recovered already from coronavirus. But my question is, this is to you guys, when do you think somebody is considered cured or fixed or no longer, well, recovered? Is it when they are no longer testing positive as a contagious person? Is it when they have no symptoms at all whatsoever? Because people can have a residual cough from a cold for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So is that holding back the recovered numbers? Is it as soon as they just start to feel a little bit better? Like, when? Is there a definitive answer to that? Or is it going to be case by case? You know? Because I still have a residual cough, and I felt better for like, what, 2 weeks now? A week and a half? Yeah, something like. I felt better for quite a while now. I don't know. This is the screenshot I took of the deaths earlier this afternoon, where people can see the total cases, the deaths, and the people that have recovered. Color coded. Helpful. And then this is the other one. Now, and here you can see all of the countries. But the interesting thing is these numbers over here on the right, when the date was first recorded. Now, focus on China. China says January 10th. But then if you go to another website, I believe this is the New York Times, this says that Chinese authorities treated dozens of cases of pneumonia of unknown cause. On December 31st, the government in Wuhan, China, confirmed that health authorities were treating dozens of cases. Days later, researchers in China identified a new virus that had infected dozens of people in Asia. At the time, there was no evidence that the virus was rapidly spread by humans. Health officials in China said they were monitoring it to prevent the outbreak from developing into something more severe. And then the 11th of January, China reported its first death. You could go and type China coronavirus first outbreak and you'll find dates in November, you'll find dates in December, you'll find dates in January. There is no clear day of when coronavirus first hit the country. Now, my son's birthday is on the 30th of January, and I do not remember hearing on the news that there was a coronavirus outbreak on the 30th of January in England. I don't remember that. And if you look at the other page, it says there, UK, first outbreak, January 30th. I don't remember this. I remember this in the middle of February. It coming to England, and there was one case like up north, and then like a couple of days later there was another case down south, and it was like, well, how did it get down there? And then it just started rapidly increasing. But I don't remember these. I just don't remember this being on the 30th of January. There's so many different dates. As I know last week I said I'll get the dates and we can have a look at it through the dates. I physically cannot. I can go by the dates on that screen. I can go by those dates. But I don't think those dates are correct. So Sweden. Why hasn't Sweden gone into lockdown over COVID-19 pandemic? The nation's reported case rate has been similar to that of the UK, yet the Swedish government has not implemented a shutdown. So I'm going to just read this article. This is from... I feel really shit for reading out a mainstream news article, but this is from Sky News. Journalism on mainstream media is never great, we know, but it was just an interesting article that I read, so I'll read it to you guys. Sweden has largely remained open for business during the coronavirus outbreak, with many bars, shops and restaurants welcoming customers. Few mandatory restrictions have been brought in to help fight COVID-19, in contrast to most other European countries which have taken a tougher approach, including lockdowns. Despite the seemingly relaxed approach to dealing with the virus, cases in Sweden has surpassed 4,000, with 146 people dying after contracting the respiratory illness. As of the 30th of March, there was 39.6 reported cases per 100,000 of the Swedish population, which was similar to the UK's case rate of 33.8 per 100,000 people. But the nation does have a much lower reported case rate than the worst hit countries on the continent, including Italy and Spain. Obviously, we know that's true, we're not stupid. But this is the interesting part. Sweden is one of the biggest spenders in Europe on its public healthcare system, spending more per capita than the UK, Spain and Italy. But despite having a higher reported case rate than the UK, which has a partial lockdown, Swedish workers and organisations are still operating largely business as usual, with the government taking a wait-and-see approach to the outbreak. So there's some restrictions in place. The gatherings, they've limited gatherings to 50 instead of 500 where it's possible. The public's being advised to practice social distancing, but the measures aren't that strict. Could that be the reason why Sweden's mortality rate is lower? That is the list of that is the list of everywhere that is currently in lockdown. Here's a few pictures I took when I went shopping on Monday. So you can see the first one here. There's the little stickers on the ground telling me where to stand. I felt like a child. I felt like, when, I don't know if you guys had this, but when I was at school, the naughty kid always used to have to sit on like their own like sticker on the floor. The teacher would like stick a big circle on the floor, and that's where their butt had to go. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was in trouble. It was a really weird vibe, really weird atmosphere. We went to Marks and Spencer's. Well, we went to Morrison's first. That was packed. There was loads of people in there. And then we went to Marks and Spencer's. So for the Americans, Morrison's is like Target, Marks and Spencer's is like Whole Foods. And in Marks and Spencer's, they were legit letting 6 customers in at a time. I got some footage of that as well, so I'll just show you how empty the shop was. But the shelves were full. In Marks and Spencer's, the shelves were full. But in Morrison's, they were pretty empty. I didn't get any footage in Morrison's because I was having to push a trolley and I didn't want people to look at me weird. There were a lot of people in there. And then I've also got some footage of the drive home, which I'll show you now. And this is where I'm just going to mute the drive and I'm going to put some music on. And you guys, if you want to stay in chat, stay in chat. If you don't, that's fine. But on the drive home, you'll see that the main roads are quieter than usual, but there's still a fuck ton of cars. And then the quieter roads, there's like nobody. There isn't anybody. And you will see other people practicing quote unquote social distancing outside the Tesco's. But yeah, as always, guys, you have an awesome week. I'll see you on Sunday. Thank you ever so much for watching. Be good. Thank you. Bye.